Hello and welcome. Welcome to the space program. Welcome to our gathering here today with myself and Erica Trivett, wonderful osteopathic practitioner and former professional dancer, much like myself. And we have a lot of areas where our interests and our expertise cross over. I wish I could say that I'm an osteopathic practitioner, but I'm not. I'm just forever. I'll be forever a wannabe, to be honest with you.
And yeah, I like Gil Headley's term, the somonaut.
Ah, yes, Somatic.
So for those
Love
who don't know,
it.
Gil Headley is a anatomist, and he teaches a lot of interesting classes and courses, and is a fabulous person. And he calls us somonauts, and I
I
like that because
love
it is
it.
like astronauts exploring space. So, yeah,
Oh, I think that's
you're a somonaut.
fantastic. Yes, we are fellow Somanauts. Um, and Erica, a question I had for you today was around um, I find osteopathic practitioners to just be, I want to call them magicians. I've had some issues as a dancer, a sprained ankle, a rotator cuff injury. I've had a few injuries as a dancer, and I was fortunate enough to be living in Montreal where the dancers there introduced me to osteopaths, as we say it there. And I just didn't really know who to see. I fell down some stairs, injured a rotator cuff. I sprained an ankle on tour in Switzerland one time, and but then came home to Montreal and thought, who do I see? And I
Mm.
was kind of guided in that direction, and literally 1 to 2 treatments, and I was better.
Yeah.
And just wow, because I had been seeing, when I was a kid, I think my mom would take me to my GP. You know, I'll never forget, I had something weird in my hip. I think I just kind of like, we would say sort of twanged one of the tendons, it just hurt all the time because I'd overdone it. And my mom took me to the GP, our general practitioner, our family doctor. And he just kind of looked at me very puzzled and said, well, you probably have bursitis.
Yeah.
And I was about 14.
That wasn't very helpful, was it?
That was not helpful. First of all, it was horrifying because I thought that sounds like arthritis. And how can I have arthritis? I'm only 14. I thought if I have that now, like bursitis to me sounded like some big spiky bump inside my hip. That's what
Yeah.
it sounded like at
Yeah.
the age of 14. Anyway, it wasn't helpful. And then within a few weeks after that, it just went away and honestly never came back. So I kind of look back on that, a moment of realizing that is not where I go for help with my body as a professional dancer or as a person who maybe is active and has little things that pop up. And then as we get older, those little things get a little bit bigger sometimes. But it's hard for me to translate my experience to someone. I now live in Vancouver. We live in Vancouver, and there are a few different types of osteopathic practitioners. And I'll stop talking here and
Yeah.
let you share because I'm trying to encourage more people
Yeah.
to experience wonderful practitioners like you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the biggest, before I delve into a definition of what it is, in the United States and in Canada and in Europe, there are different, different ways that, let's see, we could describe the osteo. I'll just say osteo for safety.
Sounds good. But
Because
when I say osteo, a lot of people think bone.
yes, of course. So yeah, osteo, it does sound like bone. It's not a very great name. It doesn't help us much. Yeah, we do work with all tissue of the body with our hands. How's that? It's a really simple explanation. I help people with their complaints, all kinds of complaints. And in the United States, where osteopathy originated with Andrew Taylor Still at the end of or near the end of the 1800s, he was a physician. So he was an allopathic physician. And in the United States, still today, to become what is called an osteopath, or medical osteopath or an osteopathic physician, you go to med school and then you specialize in osteopathic manipulative medicine.
Oh.
There's actually an increase of schools in the US. There was an article in the Times recently about that. For those who are interested, just Google that. But what they don't do as often, I think only 5% of osteos in the US, DOs as they're called, do actual manipulative medicine.
Okay.
So they're not using their hands. They're using the philosophy and have a different sort of perspective in the way that they look at the body and understand their patients' complaints, but there's limitations to what they may do. So if you are in the US and you're looking for a real manual osteopath, make sure you look for a manual osteopath, and then you'll
Okay.
be led to find those people who do the hands-on work. A lot of US citizens come up to Canada to study because of that. So I went to school actually with a number of US residents.
Oh,
And then they
interesting.
work under slightly different designations depending on the state that they live in. But in Canada, ultimately, yeah, you go to an osteopathic school. There might be a part-time program or a full-time program, depending what your background is. I went into a part-time program because of my designation, and so at that time, I did a 5-year program with a thesis. Programs vary, but
And
um,
did you have a certain designation before you started this school?
yeah, I was very fortunate. They did accept my Feldenkrais
Mm.
practitioner status, and maybe
Oh,
because wrote a very convincing letter. Nowadays, I don't know if they would allow me to join. It was hard. There were things definitely as a dancer that I lacked. I didn't go to university.
mm.
So compared to most of those programs are catered towards, say, an occupational therapist, athletic therapist, massage therapist,
Yeah.
chiros, physical therapists, nurses,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I'm probably missing a few. But generally people have some sort of healthcare designation if it's a part-time program, for sure.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are Health Organization standards that guide different schools and their programs. So there are schools that are considered lesser than because they don't abide by the same kind of criteria. But
Mhm.
anyways, that's a whole another topic.
Yeah, but
But
what you're saying by that, I think, is that the term and the labels can be misleading.
absolutely. And, just like there are, and you mentioned there are different veins of osteopathy, there are different textures of work that people do or have an affinity towards. But really ultimately we have the same goals and we abide by the principles. So we're principle guided,
Hmm.
scientifically informed. I don't like so much the word scientifically based, especially we use these science, the understanding of anatomy and physiology to inform our practices and to guide us. And the logic, it is logical.
Yeah.
So it may feel like magic, but there's a lot behind it
Yes.
from years of study, years of observing and honing in on your skills, like sensorially, mechanically, learning how to work dynamically with people, problem solving. Because you can have any kind of person walk in and maybe they're not going to be able to do what you need them to do so that you can assess them. So
Right. It's a collaboration. Eh?
yeah, like I think that's really where my dancing career really helps, like that ability to improvise and adapt to situations, listen and learn. Um, I like that about osteopathy as well.
Mm-hmm.
But Andrew Taylor still, had very pivotal moments in his life where he started to distrust medicine before he invented, let's say, osteopathy. He was seeing the direction that the medical care system was going and was like, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't seem to work.
Yeah.
And he had some aha moments in which he suddenly started to be like, okay, I'm gonna start playing around with my understanding of anatomy. And he started to build principles. So really there are some important principles. One, the body has an inherent capacity to heal. We know that. If you cut
Hmm.
yourself, it's very likely going to heal.
Yeah.
But what hinders that is sometimes things that might get in the way, too much of a pull or an accident, which disrupts all kinds of systems and mechanisms.
Hmm.
Aging, gravity, habits, things like that. So really you can say that we're looking for the root cause of a complaint and want to help people remove strain from their body with our
Hmm.
hands.
Hmm.
And so there's a deep relationship between structure and function,
Hmm.
interchangeable. I think we all
Hmm.
understand that. Like if I, as a dancer, if I want to turn out, I go
Hmm.
train and I continue to turn out and my bone
Yeah.
changes. Like I just found out, oh my gosh, recently I had a ultrasound on my hip and I can see the hip has really changed because of what I did when I was dancing.
Yeah.
That I cannot really change. I can improve the situation, but I cannot ever remove that bone without a surgical intervention. So
Right. And we, as dancers, we were doing that from quite a young age. So we were doing that
exactly.
as we're growing, as
Exactly.
we're
So we're molding the body, we're sculpting the body over a long period of time. But if you
growing.
change your habits or your functioning, which I think both as practitioners of movement practitioners, somatic practitioners, we're encouraging people to explore that movement,
Hmm.
explore their awareness of how they do things, how they're behaving, what leg
Hmm.
are they standing on, how are they breathing. If you begin to guide people towards that new intent and direction, things will begin to change.
Right.
Sometimes that change can be scary because maybe there is a little bit more pain involved in that change. And that's where we step in and guide and really have to work with people specifically to make sure that we have proper alignment, or maybe they're doing something wrong, or it's just
Hmm.
inappropriate for them. So there's that dialogue that's really important in our work, both of us.
It
Uh,
is important. I have a little saying that I developed, which is this the pain of growth or is this the pain of banging my head against a wall? Meaning, if you can have a guide, because sometimes change is uncomfortable and it can be change that is in a direction of growth. And I do feel like we get a little bit conditioned through marketing and sales that
yeah,
any kind of pain, we want to avoid it at all costs. Whereas, I feel like in my work and, when we're talking about somatic work, we want to call it more like sensation and be curious about it. And
yeah,
being a yogi, breath as our guide. Is it the type of pain that you can still maintain a calm breath, or is it taking your breath away? If it's literally
yeah,
causing you to restrict your breath, that's more than you can work with. But I do
mm,
think it's helpful to know. I mean, just like moods, feeling sad is okay. We're not always meant to be happy, and we're not always going to be pain free, but
yeah,
but
yeah,
moving in the direction of healing can sometimes bring up some pain.
yeah, absolutely. Some of the other principles of osteopathy, which is very unique maybe about osteopathy, is also we really see the body as a whole.
Hmm.
Yes, there are different parts and or systems, but ultimately we're a whole. So body, mind, and spirit was another principle of Andrew Taylor Still's
Oh, wonderful.
a functional unit, they say. Oh, and yeah, there's sort of terms like find it, fix it, leave it alone, and let nature do the rest. That speaks to the,
Mm.
get in there, make your adjustment, your support, your removal of strain, however you want to use, what words you want to use, and then let nature take care of it.
Mm.
Sometimes, yeah, time dependent, like I have people who come in when they're in dire straits and I can help, but they have to be realistic in the expectation. And I do find on that topic of pain that it does provide an opportunity for learning. And the ones that people that do make the biggest changes are the ones that are willing to take, like, own that responsibility as well themselves and are not necessarily depending on the practitioner to just fix and solve everything for them. It does
Right.
take some home care work, different approach, trying to put aside some limiting beliefs or previous practices, maybe even
Hmm.
like people, for example, today I was working with somebody about really slow movement and talking about how really slow movement is important. And then I showed her fast movement. And she's like, oh, so should I be doing this fast? And I was like, well, actually, not necessarily, but let's talk about slow twitch and fast twitch muscles. Let's talk about what happens at the beginning of a movement and what's important for postural integrity and ability to hold yourself. Like we really need certain muscles to be supportive, and that's actually the really slow work, and people don't like that.
Yeah.
I get it, but I love the saying that you have to go slow before you can move quickly sometimes, and reflect and take the time. Unfortunately,
It's true.
people don't like that. They want to go, they want results now, like we were talking about this sales and pitch and go, go, go world.
Yeah.
What we offer absolutely is just more reflection on how you're moving, how you're living, and how you're
Mhm.
experiencing your body.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're very similar in our approaches to our clients, customers, students in that way. I like to allow space for their wisdom to arise,
Yes.
and I think we're talking, as you say, one of the principles of osteopathy being, mind, body, spirit. So the intelligence of your body to heal a cut. You don't have to think, now I need to clot the blood and mend the skin. Bing, bing. Come on, blood.
However, maybe that would work too, right?
You but in times of stress, in times of high stress, we know that those systems in our body tend to not work as well. They're
Yeah.
inhibited. So learning how to be available for the healing, to be available for the movement, bringing in a little listening, a little curiosity, perhaps slowing down.
Mm.
I struggled a little bit. I remember learning when I was in teacher training for Pilates with Diane Miller, who's just one of our pioneers of Pilates.
Yeah. In
Excellent
Vancouver, BC. Yes.
in Vancouver, in Canada. She was our first Pilates teacher
Yeah.
in Canada. So she really shared the principle of Pilates, which is it's done with eyes open. And as soon as you possibly can, you put the movement in rhythm with breath.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
so, so what we learn through the Pilates teachings and practice of a teacher like her is that if you go too slowly, you impede the natural rhythmic process of your body and you confuse your brain in terms of like, what's happening here? What's happening?
Mm.
And I think that's accurate in terms of the goal of Pilates is low tension movement, natural movements,
Yeah.
natural movements like walking and moving. And but having been a yogi for so many years and a meditator, I love to close my eyes and go
Mm.
slowly and feel, wait, what am I doing? Okay, where did I miss it? And she was always on me. Marla, open your eyes, put
Interesting.
put it in rhythm.
Yeah,
So
that's very contrary to like Dr. Feldenkrais, who would be like, you do play with rhythm, so there would be a commonality for sure. And he did play with different speeds, so you're not always moving slowly.
yeah,
But in many of the lessons, there are rhythmical and more play with speed. There's so that I appreciate, and I appreciate you saying that it's specific to Pilates because I get he
yes,
wanted to cut off as much sensory information. So one of the reasons why you're closing the eyes is because you're trying to be in your body and trying to actually observe what happens, which many
yes,
people, if the eyes are open, and you can do it with your eyes open, there's no saying you
you
can't.
can. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but um, but he's trying to reduce stimuli. Dr. Feldenkrais understood physics, electric, mechanical engineer. So he understood certain principles like the Weber-Fechner law. I talk about a lot in my
Oh,
lessons
cool.
when I'm teaching, which is about stimuli and reducing it. Because if you have a lot of stimuli, you cannot notice subtle things. But if you
I
reduce the
agree.
stimuli,
Mhm.
then you can start to notice. So I'm
Yes,
sure like Diane probably did slow down and work slowly with
she
people.
absolutely did.
Yeah.
She absolutely did. She would break things apart and slow them down. And, she was one of these incredibly brilliant teachers who was often a bundle of contradictions. So,
Right, right. All teachers are.
yes, exactly. So to extract one thing that she used to say, she did say that to me a lot. And I think one of the reasons she said that to me a lot is because I really would get a bit dreamy, I think, in her vision and kind of languish in that space. However, because I've studied a lot of different modalities, um, I have come to recognize that there is, even within Pilates, there is the value of perhaps eyes closed or just eyes relaxed, that inward focus. Because if you're trying to make a change in your body and get out of an unconscious habit, I think it takes that slowing down and that consciousness,
Mm.
cultivating or creating that new pathway, then putting into movement with breath. And so that's kind of how I've adapted it. I do hear a little Diane voice on my shoulder sometimes saying, "Come on, Marla," and I have seen it work. Like in the Pilates center, we would have clients and we would kind of team teach. So we'd be walking around while people were doing their workouts. And so sometimes I'd be struggling with someone. And I observed this in other teachers as well. You'd be like, okay, I'm trying to get you to feel this, trying to get you to do this. And then sometimes Diane would just walk up and go, okay, go faster, do it in rhythm, put your breath in rhythm. So you're inhaling, exhaling, moving with the breath and putting it in rhythm. And it just comes together.
Nice.
And that's not
What
all the
about
time. That takes that expertise.
what about Buteyko and that training or the ELDOA training for you? And maybe speak to the Buteyko first. Like, is there
Yeah.
like how, because of course you've got to notice your breath and how you're breathing before you can make any changes. So,
Yes.
in the process of working in that context.
Yeah. So in the context of Buteyko, I continue to learn on a deeper level how to work with the principles and the concepts of Buteyko, which were Buteyko was created by a Ukrainian doctor who was living in Russia at the time, Dr. Konstantin Buteyko. And this method coming from a doctor has just been such a wonderful addition to my knowledge, my studies, my experience. And I became very curious about how to restore the 24/7 breath. How do you get healthy breathing patterns and habits when you're not thinking about it, your unconscious breath? So you're absolutely right. The starting place is always noticing what is.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of getting quiet. Often you'll start with a body scan, not even thinking about your breath. Let
Yeah.
yourself become still. Start with just a little scan. Relax your forehead, your face, your eyes. You can kind of move your way down your whole body. Let yourself settle, find good alignment. Then start to notice your breathing rhythm. Notice where you're breathing. Are you nose breathing, mouth breathing? Where does the breath go in your body? So,
Mm-hmm.
all of that before even trying to make an intervention.
Right.
And I get very excited when I have the information, and especially in my early years, probably about 5 years ago, when I really discovered Buteyko breath work and the balance of oxygen and CO2, and how you can really help restore the nervous system when you improve that tolerance of CO2 and stop your crazy oxygen addiction, which just makes people's minds go a little bit crazy. But I continually have to slow myself down as a guide, and I have to completely hang back. And my wonderful
While
challenge,
you're working with the student.
yes, while I'm working with a student, I have to, because we are inherently built in North America, or I find in Canada anyway, we have it built into us that we want to do what we're being asked. We want to do well.
Yeah, we want to do a good job.
We want to do a good job. And so we can kind of fake it. And I have to be that way with myself as well, as because as a performer and a practitioner of over 30 years, if you tell me to breathe within these certain counts, I can do it. They
Mhm.
can even be fairly crazy, really challenging. I can do it, and I can make it look like I'm not struggling.
Mhm.
But what's happening underneath?
Right.
So one of the main challenges when we're working with the breath is that we have to go slow
Mhm.
in terms of not pushing. The breath might actually be kind of quick, because when people are not well,
Yeah.
any kind of stress, mental, emotional, physical, environmental, any of those stresses, our breath speeds up. So when we ask that person to slow their breathing down, it can be really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm wondering, just because this all sounds so familiar with Feldenkrais's work too, and since that Buteyko is from Russia, you said, right?
Yeah, he was
Yeah, I wonder.
Ukrainian and he was living in
Okay.
Russia. Mhm.
Yes, because Feldenkrais was also from what is now current day Ukraine,
Oh,
sorry.
wow. Okay.
Ukrainia.
I like that.
And yeah, it just sounds really familiar. Meeting people where they are, paying attention, learning what you do before you can really begin to use whatever strategy it is you're going to take to make change. Um, but I wonder if they knew each other. This is the kind of
I
conversation I
wonder.
love
I
where like
know. I
I bet
wonder.
you they had coffee together somewhere
Ex
or
exactly.
a tea or whatever
Yeah.
in the
Well, if you do a
Ukraine.
classic Buteyko breathing set, which I feel like is not very popular anymore,
Huh.
but there is a classic set, and then there's an abbreviated version of a set. And it would take you normally about 10 minutes once you've learned how to do a set.
Oh
And
yeah.
for somebody who's motivated to really radically change their breathing. Say they have severe asthma. They might have severe asthma and they're living in the United States and the medication is $4,000 a month. They're
Yeah.
very motivated then to not be so reliant on that medication. And this is a pathway for that. Or the medications aren't helping them. Their body doesn't agree with them. They're not doing a good job. In that case, a person would probably be motivated to do 4 sets a day. I have had teachers who said they did 4 Buteyko sets a day, but within the classic set, it is built in that you take your pulse before,
Okay.
you do a comfortable pause, you do relaxed breathing or reduced breathing, then you do comfortable pause again to just check how you're doing, and then you take your pulse again at the end. So you bookend it with your pulse so that when you look at your set and you're recording all of these little numbers, if your heart rate goes up, that shows you that you've pushed it.
Is that good?
No. Your heart rate should stay the same or go down, depending on where you're starting. You
Right.
shouldn't ramp up your system.
Okay.
So you have to try not to be performative
I got it. Okay.
and try to go for the numbers without explaining it all. But you know what I mean? Like, because I can hold my breath for a really long time, but your heart rate goes up, that means you're pushing yourself out of the parasympathetic.
Okay, so that's a component of with a set is holding the breath as well. There's some.
Yes, there is some breath holding at the end of the exhale, and Dr. Buteyko believed that, and I think it's quite accurate. He called that basically like a health test. There's a measure of your health. So we can just, not to be mysterious, we'll just take a normal breath in, let your air out, and then there will be a natural stop. At the end of your natural stop, you hold, and you might even close off your nose. You hold, and you can use a timer. You can just count yourself. But ideally, that hold can be comfortably in the range of 30, 40, even 45 seconds. He believed that if it was under 10 seconds, that's a sign that you're not in good health and it's dangerous for you to be doing exercise.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so that's certainly interesting. Now I want to book a Buteyko breathing session with you.
Yes, yeah, it is actually fascinating because it's to realize that you have the ability to get a handle on that. Modern Buteyko teachers, I mean, he had a chart for if your comfortable pause was 5 seconds or 10 or 15 or 20, like basically in lists of symptoms. So you want to get it at minimum 30, you want to get it to 30 seconds or beyond. But truthfully, modern Buteyko teachers, I don't think we talk that much about that because there are so many components. I can't sit here and say that because you did that, you're in good health or bad health. It does depend on, you could have held it and then your heart rate went up. You could have, all kinds of things. But I definitely noticed at the height of my Buteyko practice for myself and my own body was during my training, and I was doing a walking practice probably twice a day. And I got my comfortable pause up to, I think, 50.
Okay.
And I felt amazing.
Okay.
You don't feel tired. Your sleep is incredibly efficient. You don't need a lot of sleep. Your appetite is in a great place. Your mental state is in a great place. I mean, it is a really wonderful place to be. But in order to keep your comfortable pause that high, you do have to keep practicing.
Right. Yeah.
It's a bit like being a runner.
Yeah.
If you stop running, you can't always just go and run. Yeah. It's a training thing.
Before we finish today, can we transition to ELDOA since we've talked about osteopathy? We talked about Pilates a bit. We did a little bit of Buteyko breathing. Let's switch to ELDOA.
Absolutely. The place where we merge.
Yeah, and where we really met, I guess.
It's true. Yeah. So as a practitioner, I took kind of a funny route, which is why I never became an osteopathic practitioner. Because I had a dance career and then that kind of moved me into movement practices. But I started to recognize probably about 12 years ago that I did have a desire to be able to help people more deeply. So when I spotted, it was
I love this story.
Yeah.
Story. I love it.
It was Carolyn Woods at Vancouver Pilates Center. I was watching her and she's just she's a wonderful teacher if you ever get a chance.
Didn't you walk into a gym or a space or something?
Well, it was a space like that. It was the reformer side of the studio. So at Vancouver Pilates at that time, they had one side of the space is all reformers, like like 15 reformers, and then the other side was more of an open studio space where you could do classes, like movement classes and mat work. So we were on the reformer side, and that's where we were both working together. And then there's 3 or 4 of us roaming around, just helping people individually. So I was watching Carolyn working with people, and I saw her doing this. I was like, what is she doing? I had seen it before, but like hands were going like this and arms here. And she was really instructing them. And I thought, what is that? And another teacher explained to me, oh, that's ELDOA. Carolyn studied in Toronto with Ruxandra Mitria. And I'm like, well, where can I learn it? Like, what? So I asked
So
Carolyn
just after
about it.
seeing that, you were like intrigued. You didn't even
It just
try.
looks, I was so intrigued. It looked so specific.
Yeah.
I could see what was happening. I don't know, to my eye, and just because I think I see and feel with my whole body, not just, like my, as dancers, I feel like sometimes our whole body is our brain.
Yeah.
So there was something intuitive about that I just looked at that and I went, I
Yeah,
want to
that's
understand
interesting.
that.
Yeah, because I would say that intuitiveness with each modality that I've studied has been almost right away. Like
Yeah.
I did one Feldenkrais class. I had maybe one osteopathic treatment, and then that was sort of registered as like when the time came, I was like, yeah, that's an option. I'm gonna do that. Same thing with ELDOA. Like my first exposure was really with you. And I think after it was a group class or something, and we did I think we did L5S1 posture, so for the lumbar spine, the bottom, the big one.
Yeah.
And I left and I was like, wow, I can see clearly, and that made a huge difference. And so right away I was just like, I got to do more. I want to know more. It seems smart, and I liked that it was so different than like the really slow stuff that I'd been doing. Which, yeah, so I liked the brevity of it, the instantaneous or seemingly instantaneous results. It
Mm-hmm.
was, for me, I liked your description of it as being like a tequila shot.
I was just gonna say, yeah, you're
Drink
reminding
a
me of my
glass of
tequila
wine,
shot.
you've got
Yeah.
like the tequila shot of exercise and self-care. For me, certainly in the clinic, I find it challenging to encourage people in their busy lives with not a lot of space that
Yeah.
they need different kinds of approaches to health that may help them. So if they are retired and they have more time, great. Or if they have more control over their time and they don't have children running around or things to do, great. But most people, at least in Vancouver, don't have a lot of space
Yeah.
and don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, so I discovered ELDOA and started to study it. It took a while. I had to pester people. I had to keep asking, but I do love that about ELDOA, that it is, once you learn it and once you understand how it works, once you get the principle, it's safe to do, number one. You only do it as much as you can do it.
Yeah.
You can use a wall or the floor as a guide for your alignment. And then my term for it, and this is not official, but I like to call it a therapeutic intervention.
Yeah.
So it's a therapeutic intervention that is in your hands.
Hmm.
So it's a technique that you learn and then you can do it repeatedly, because as we were just discussing, we are a sum of what we do each day.
Yeah.
So when we can increase our awareness, when we can make some of these small shifts, they over time add up to very big change.
Well said.
And if we can teach our people, our clients, our students to be interested in participating in that, and the sooner they learn these things, the results can be just amazing. So yeah,
Yeah.
ELDOA is my most powerful tool.
Yeah. And we both understand the brilliance of Guy Voyer, the founder, who was an osteo,
Yeah.
and took a long time to develop this. So I certainly am in admiration of that capacity to really look at what's out there and create something really unique, specific, and helpful.
Yeah, I agree. And sadly, we lost him last year, but there are some, fantastic people out there that I get to study with, that you get to study with, that literally followed him around
Yeah.
and studied with him as much as they possibly could. And I was always in awe of those people. I had little kids
Yeah.
at the time, and that just wasn't an option for me. But I'm thankful we have some great resources out there to
We
keep
do.
this work alive and to keep it as clear as possible. And just like Feldenkrais or even Pilates, things can shift or mutate, and it's like a language. So of course, a certain amount of that can be wonderful. And a certain amount of it can, we need some of those senior teachers out there or advisors to help us not stray too far from
Yeah.
the effectiveness or,
The purity of it. Yeah.
purity of
Keep it
it.
real.
Mhm.
Keep it true to the intent of the originator. I'm sure there are little deviations or things that get adjusted. But
Mhm.
yeah, like I don't know, like the legs should be here versus here, It's
There's always those little
everybody's
things.
going to be the same. You've got to really listen and listen to the
Yes.
tissue.
And much like what we
That's
said about
professional.
Diane Miller and her brilliance and bundle of contradictions at times, or seeming contradictions, Guy was even more so. And
Yeah.
so in this, the number of I've been to many trainings as well, but as many as I could. But it's funny because a lot of times the questions would be around, well, I was in a training with Guy over, in this place at this time, and he said this, and then somebody else was at a training with Guy at this place and this time different, and on the same issue, he said completely different things. So when we extract those kinds of details, it's kind of funny. And so the way I resolve that is he was often responding to the body in front of him or the situation in front of him, or maybe even the situation from the day before.
Yeah.
And he's a human being. But let's talk about, just to finish, just to wrap up here, how ELDOA and the type of work I do with breath, and let's just highlight mostly Buteyko and ELDOA and osteopathy, how
Yeah.
they blend so beautifully together, and how as
God.
a complement or as a team they support each other. I'll just last thing I'll say is that Guy Voyer used to say that the therapeutic intervention, the manual intervention, was 30% of the equation, and the
Mm.
70% of the equation towards healing is more around exercise, movement, and what you do,
Yeah.
what the person does themselves.
Yeah. My answer to that is that, yeah, I see the most improvements in people who take some responsibility. So yes, they come to see me for some intervention and supportive care, but they will do better if they have tools. Now we have a number of tools between the two of us
Mm-hmm.
that we can use. I've started to teach postures to people, at least one if they're new,
Mm-hmm.
and slowly,
Okay.
gently, appropriately start to stack and increase, and certainly encourage people to work more intently in that way. Come see you, work with me solely on education. For example, the breath work, it's like you have another way of working with the breath and understanding of some of the strategies, which I think are incredibly beneficial to people, more specificity and a real laid out strategies and techniques to improve the breath, which is,
Mhm.
as we've discussed in our previous conversations, is so important. And then
Yeah.
Pilates, I see really about a little bit more like, I know it isn't really an exercise modality, but
Hmm.
in the context of these forms or these
Mhm.
modalities, it is the most exercise based, shall we say? Because
I would agree. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's a movement system. It's a
yeah,
system of movement, and so ELDOA is I like to say therapeutic intervention. It's a
the
series of
postural,
postures where they're dynamic, so they're not stagnant. They're
yes,
dynamic, but you're not training your body in movement. So Pilates, for example, Pilates and ELDOA work beautifully together because they're both about opening space.
yeah,
One is using all the fascial chains in your body. That's ELDOA, using all of the fascial chains to open up the joint spaces in your body, and
mm,
combined with perhaps some myofascial stretch. And then Pilates is about healthy movement at low tension while you keep the system open and available. So not compressed and not like,
yeah. So it's not
you're,
just about core, as many people would
it's
think.
not.
And then for me, yeah, for me to add to that, to Feldenkrais would be, yeah, movement and awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Pathways, repatterning would be words that come to mind for plasticity, working on
Mm-hmm.
the plasticity. Even though I would say it does make more space for sure in the body, as in my experiences, it made a lot more balance in the myofascial system and
Mm-hmm.
helped me, even though it's not very, it doesn't take a lot of effort per se, although can be very effortful. And I know that's backwards to say, but a lot more balanced um, muscle coordination, better posture, better sense of self, better breath. Yeah, yeah, we could
Yeah, I
go
think one thing that Feldenkrais and
trauma.
Pilates in a way have in common is it has a little bit to do, those are movement practices, and I don't want to speak too far into Feldenkrais, so please correct me, but they're a little bit around finding that harmony and low tension in your body, almost like you're going back to factory settings,
Yes.
like
Yeah,
back
because
to
there is a
original settings where before you fell off your bike and before you had the
yes.
stress of final exams that you had to sit and study for 3 weeks,
Yes.
hold yourself
Yeah,
like this.
because there is a repatterning component and you're exploring movements that were part of your developmental learning as a little baby.
Yes, and just a little bit that I've done. I've done a little bit with you, and I did a little bit a long time ago. But you almost have that disbelief of like, well, I feel like I'm hardly doing anything, especially as someone who was a professional dancer. But there's this beautiful harmony of like an echo of familiarity.
Yes,
There's like this
coming
echo of like,
home.
wait a minute, I know this, almost like being held as a baby, you know. I feel like when I had my babies, you know, and I got to hold them, there was an aspect of me holding myself, sort of like an
Yeah.
echo, you know, where there's the,
Nice.
and then to tap into those kinds of movements where you're like, oh, wait, okay, I don't even really know what's happening, but somehow my whole body is being soothed.
Lovely. That was a good explanation.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you, Marla.
it's an experiential explanation. So as someone who's never studied it officially, but I'm definitely, what is it? Not a cosmonaut, but a somonaut. Somonaut. I'm definitely a somonaut. I can't help that.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
thank
you
you,
for the
Erica. This has been
discussion.
so delightful.
Yeah. Thank you, Marla.